People don't need advice for an FD. People thinking, 1 lakh रुपए लगा दूँ, 10,000 रुपए लगा दूँ, and I will be like super rich and 25 दिन में पैसा double. Everyone thinks that there is something to be bought and sold in this moment of time which will help you make money.
What is the toughest thing of being an investment advisor?
Why am I not getting at 1% every month? Because I want to get 12% a year. So at 1% every month should be coming in. A very big factor involved here in the success with stock market, which is called time.
What qualities clients possess?
Patience, discipline, and consistency. They're also willing to understand that if the markets have gone down, they see a drawdown of changing your portfolio, changing your lifestyle, looking at your cash flows. If you have too much in debt and the markets have gone down, please take money from one side and put into other side.
Could you just a little more elaborate on the investment process and asset allocation?
If someone has been earning 5 crores, spending 5 crores, मैं कल की चिंता क्यों करूं? I want to live in the moment. People do come with hesitation because they've never done it. They've never talked to an advisor. They don't know where the money is going. But there's a realization, and that changes a lot of things. Asset allocation is a sort of a golden rule. End of it, money has to do something for you. You don't want to just leave money behind for your kids to enjoy. You want it to do something for you.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Spring Money podcast where we have honest conversations about your money decisions. This time very interestingly, we have done one experiment wherein instead of me asking any questions, we have actually brought in two of the qualified advisors together to actually have a genuine, honest conversations. Both of these are exceptional at what they do and they have been friends together. They are going to understand each other and they are going to actually pose the questions that you have as audiences. We hope you would enjoy this. Let us know in the comments.
Welcome, Vipin. So my first question is, what is an RIA and why are you an RIA and not an MFD?
Thanks, Amey. Tough question to start with. Actually, I need to go back a little in time to answer this. So, I have been a part of the advisory industry, if I may call that, since 2006. I was working with another company where I was working with clients on their portfolios. And I don't know if you recall, at that time, there was nothing like RIAs or direct plans or mutual funds. Everything was regular, right? There were only commissions that were paid out on various investment instruments, including mutual funds. And that's what we were doing. Now, even at that time, I don't know, there used to be a thought, at least with me, that a customer should have a choice whether they want to pay a commission or whether they want to pay a fee for the service that they're taking. But it was just a thought, and of course, SEBI took some steps. There was entry load, which was abolished in 2007 or 8, I think. And life went on. 2011, I took a break from that industry and did an online e-learning venture, which failed grandly. And in 2015, I was back to wondering as to what should I be doing. And my fallback was to go back to what I was doing earlier, which was, mutual funds, financial planning, helping clients with their portfolio. It was a very satisfying work as long as I did it. So I said, this is great. Let me just get back to it. So you would be surprised, but I was not planning to be an RIA initially. I actually went out to the registrar office and applied to become a distributor, a mutual fund distributor. But for 3 months, my application remained stuck for some operational reason. And it was very frustrating because I wanted to do something and here, the whole framework is not moving forward. So I said, chuck it, and at that very time, I came to know, I don't know why I didn't know earlier, but I came to know that SEBI has now launched a framework which allows a category of advisors who charge fees to the client and also recommend them non-commission oriented products, the direct plans for mutual funds. I was very happy and I said, this is exactly what I would like to do. This is aligned with what I want to do for my clients, for my investors. That's where RIA happened because I couldn't become a mutual fund distributor. I became an RIA.
So, Vipin, how many investors and clients you would have spoken to in the last 15, 20 years that you have been in the advisory role in this industry?
I can only take a guess, and I think it would be over 1,000 investors. At least 1,000, I think.
So, could you recall for us what are the most common 3, 4, 5 questions or the important parts for recurring for most of these investors? Which makes a difference from an advisor's perspective. What are they looking for? Advice क्या मांग क्या रहे?
I mean, it sounds strange, but people don't need advice for an FD, right? And people don't need advice for putting money in RBI bonds or buying gold or real estate even for that matter. But when it comes to the markets, there's an inherent sense of fear, apprehension as to, this whole thing looks like a grand casino. Will I lose my money? Is there someone out to get me or my, money and take it away? Which we have seen, it has happened in various cases. So there is this sense of fear which they would like to get addressed and work with someone who can guide them through this journey of helping them invest in the financial markets, the stock markets. But why would they want to do that? Because they have been seeing success stories where people have invested money in markets through mutual funds, stocks, whatever the vehicle might be, and they've made it big. They've made big, and I know so many people who have fulfilled so many goals of theirs. They have been pulled out of really difficult, hard situations when there's just a very small amount of money, but with some dedication and consistency, they grew into a very large portfolio, and they're very comfortable today. So yes, that has happened over time, but right from that day to this day, there is a deep misunderstanding of how this whole investing in the market works. And I've said it enough and many times that the biggest thing to blame here is the ticker. The whole ticker creates a sense of immediate action reaction for most investors. Everyone thinks that there is something to be bought and sold in this moment of time which will help you make money. There's a lottery ticket which, when the machine opens up, will throw up a large sum of money at you and you'll feel like the king of the world or the queen of the world. But that's not the case. There is a very big factor involved here in the success with stock markets, which is called time. Most people don't tend to appreciate that fact. The other thing they don't tend to appreciate is the amount of money you want to put in. People thinking, 1,000 का कोई stock है वो खरीद लूँ, 10 रुपये कोई stock है वो खरीद लूँ, 1 लाख रुपये लगा दूँ, 10,000 रुपये लगा दूँ, and I will be like super rich in maybe in a month's or a few months time. We've all heard the big joke about 25 दिन में पैसा double. So that's actually out there in the ground, right? I mean, this was the movie. Yeah. So people find it difficult to fathom this this animal called the stock markets, and they need someone with whom they can make this journey. That comes in various forms because people's life situations are different, their goals are different, and they expect the advisors to help them take them through that journey.
So Vipin, I know for a fact that you have probably helped more than at least 500 investors, right? And many of them continue to be associated with you. What are those 2 or 3 qualities that the investor had which made them stick with you and create that great wealth in their own journey over the last 10, 15, 20 years? What qualities do your most successful clients possess?
3 main ones: patience, discipline, consistency. They had patience, most important one. They were willing to go through the good and the bad times. They were willing to understand that, if there's a super-sized return appearing in the portfolio, it's not forever. They were also willing to understand that if the markets have gone down, they see a drawdown of or a loss of significant number, 20, 30, 40% in some cases, it's not there forever. This too shall pass. They understood that fact. They also were disciplined enough to follow a plan over a period of time, because that's what ultimately counts, right? You can't make one investment and believe that this will deliver the final outcome to you. It doesn't happen that way. They were willing to save. They were disciplined enough to save on a regular basis. They understood where they can pull out money and put it into these very worthy investments and let it grow over a period of time through the thick and thin, and make it into a portfolio that they can use to fulfill all the financial milestones that they have in mind. And of course, all this requires a certain amount of consistent behavior. It doesn't mean that they never had their doubts. They never wanted to get out because the things were looking really scary. But then of course that's when they look up to their advisors to help them guide and keep them grounded and keep moving forward. But yes, patience, discipline, consistency, I think that's more than enough for most investors. And these are the kind of people who work with me. No one else. If someone is impatient, we can't work with each other.
So these 3 qualities that you mentioned, right? Patience, discipline, and consistency. If an investor wants to develop these qualities, how would you recommend them to approach? What should they do? Should they read some books? Should they watch certain videos? Should they follow certain investors? Should they, how can they develop this?
So, see, each of these things helps. Each of these is an input, a video somewhere, an influencer somewhere, maybe, a good book somewhere. There are tons of good books out there. And each of these items informs your brain in some way, right? And at some point, the good thing strikes, and it helps us realize that probably what I'm doing so far is not enough. There's something else that is required for me to get different kinds of result. I don't know if it was Shiv Khera or someone who said, if you keep doing the same thing, you can't expect a different result. I think that just comes to them, maybe in a different way, it comes to them over a period of time. And I won't say everyone goes down the same path, same route. There are people who work with other people like me and many other advisors out there, and they expect that advisors to then inform them about this particular behavioral trait and help them stick to it over a period of time. That's when it will happen. A lot of people will continue to harbor doubt even in this journey, which is a good thing in a way, because it keeps everyone on their toes and ensures that the decisions are taken are correct in that context of the client and his financial situation. But yeah, can't say that everyone gets it. Some people have to be just pushed through it.
Is there one book that you would recommend that your clients should read to get this kind of orientation?
Yeah, I can name a lot of books, but I think the most important thing people and investors can do is to become informed about what other people in their position are doing. And I think one of the, and I'll tell you why I'm saying that, because a lot of people who ultimately come to me to work with me are people who have heard the success of doing such a thing from their friends, family, colleagues. So that's when they get the confidence to do something like this, and that's when they start on this journey as well. So having said that, I think The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, I think, is a great book for most people to read. It has some very practical examples of what happened when people took the right kind of steps towards their financial journeys. There's another book by Jason Zweig. It's called Your Money and Your Brain. Right? I think it's another very book which informs you in the right ways. Yeah, I think these two books are pretty good to start with.
What is the toughest thing of being an investment advisor? What is tough for you? What is challenging for you, difficult for you to do?
The only thing I find challenging is when investors become impatient.
Okay. What do you mean?
And it happened in the initial phase of my advisory. And probably I was not informing them well about the whole cycle that they will have to go through. And, I'll give you an example. So I would recommend a mutual fund, and after 1 year, 1.5 years, no returns or very less returns or not as good as other funds. And the investors will come back and say, this is not doing well, we should change it. We should look at some other funds. And of course, people have all the access to the information these days, so you can't tell them, no, you don't know, and I know better. So you will have to now guide them very carefully about why this fund was included, and why should they be sticking around with it for a period of time, what is the expectation we had originally set, etc., etc. So it used to happen a lot when these investors used to become impatient with a particular investment option we had chosen, because everybody is coming from that mindset, that why am I not getting at 1% every month, because I want to get 12% a year, so at 1% every month should be coming in. So there's the idea which we have heard a lot about, non-linearity, right? Stock markets don't work plus. There's a lot of minus and then some plus, right? So I think as investors gained experience, as I as an advisor gained some more experience, I think we have been able to handle this problem now. We have started informing right in the beginning that there's nothing to hurry. We are planning for a 40, 50, 60-year journey. A few months here and there, a few years here and there is not going to kill any one of us. We just have to ensure that we are doing the right thing, right? And we'll do course correction whenever is required. It will not happen in 1.5 years for sure.
Suppose I am a 30-year-old married man with one kid. Say my income is, say, 50 lakhs a year. What will you advise? How will be your, you can ask me questions, I'll give you answers. What will be the process? Just run us through a little bit. How do you approach advising such a person?
So I think the most important question I ask anyone is, what do they want their money to do for them? Right? I mean, ultimately, at the end of it, money has to do something for you. You don't want to just leave money behind for your kids to enjoy. You want it to do something for you. And it could be anything. For example, in my goals, one of the goals is in 2047, I should be able to go to the space for a tour, right? Just think why.
You will be ready. Elon Musk should be ready.
I'm sorry?
Elon Musk has to be ready.
Yes, that's why this whole 20 years in between. But the point is, people should be willing and able to identify what do they want their money to do, right? And there could be simpler things like, I have a kid, I just want to ensure that she or he gets the right education so that they can stand on their own 2 feet. I want to build a house of my preference. I want to be able to change a few cars in my career. Maybe, send my parents to a, pilgrimage, not in a train journey, but of a different kind. Maybe tour the world. The things that you want to do, they have aspirations, right? Ultimately, that's what you're doing. You're trying to live an aspirational life, and ultimately, if you can put it down on a piece of paper, identify them as milestones, then your entire money can be planned and programmed to meet those milestones. It doesn't have to be, I want to build a 100 crore portfolio. What will you do with that 100 crore? There's no purpose to it. The purpose is what gives us the kick to keep moving forward, to keep working. It also helps us to then identify the right kind of portfolio that should work for those investments. Right? If you have, let's say, you said, you have a 50 lakh income bracket. It's a very good income bracket at the age of 30, right? Even if you're saving 50% of it, which is 25 lakhs, right? In just about 10 years, you'll be saving 2.5 crores. There's just one kid, right? I'll probably assume you have a house, even by yourself or probably of your parents, right? So it's not that big a concern. But this money invested properly over a period of time will bring you, if nothing else, financial freedom at a very early age, right? And it will also help you achieve all the other things that you will determine with it. Now, of course, you can go really berserk and say, I want, a BMW X5 in the next 5 years, which means you're going to pull out all the money that you have saving and put that into that thing which will just eat it all up and also add expenses on a regular basis for you. So these are the kind of negotiations that one has to do on paper with the things they want to achieve, the money that they have and the money they're going to generate in the future, and align it all together to see that you feel happy at the end of it, that you have been able to do things that you have only been dreaming of. So those are the discussions, right? We sit down and say, let's understand what you want to do with your money. Let's now take stock of where your investments are today, how your cash flows will look like. Are you saving enough? And what kind of investment portfolio you'll be comfortable with? Because, a person could come and say, I'm very aggressive, I can take risk, but so far they've only invested in FDs, which means, what they're saying and what they're doing is completely different. Then you have to ease them out into the whole process. It will take probably 5 years before they start getting comfortable with the idea of risk. And in 10 years, 15 years, which is typical what I've seen in most cases, they can be sitting on a rich pot of money to do what they want probably.
So tell us some customer stories where, your advice or it was interesting for you to advise, or just their journey, or something that you advised which made a big difference to them. If you could just typically, narrate a few cases which you enjoyed advising, for example, or it could just be maybe you didn't enjoy, but it made a big difference to them, right? Your advice made a big difference to them. A few examples,
So see, as an advisor, my biggest kick comes in when there are constraints, in the challenge that faces me. I think one of the earliest such constraints I faced with a client couple who this person had retired early, and the overall money that they had available with them was pretty less. If I were to name a number, they're probably sitting on a 1.1 crore portfolio about 7 years back, and they were looking at least a 30-year future lifestyle expenses to be met. And there was a lot of discussion about how we should proceed with the limited money that was available and ensure that they are able to, the portfolio is able to provide for at least the next 30 years, if not more. Initially, it meant putting a lot of constraints on what they were spending on. They were given a budget and they had to operate within that budget, because it was not clear as to if the money will really last, right? Because even if I were to do a simple calculation, if they were spending, let's say, 30,000 a month that time, and we're looking at 3.6 lakhs a year, that's about 36 lakhs in a decade. Their money would, at this rate, outlast in about 30 to 40 years. But that would mean very constrained living, no additional corpus for medical emergencies, if any. If they have to move out and go to another place because they didn't have children, right? So there would probably be some point in their life where they will have to move to assisted living, maybe an old age home, things like those, right? So that is not part of this, right? We're just looking at, if they stay on their own, how could they cross that barrier of meeting the expenses or 30-40 expenses. But then markets just happened to be kind. Even with the conservative portfolio construction, they saw a good amount of increase in their overall portfolio size. Currently, they're in a position where they have bought another house, and a much better house for themselves. They're planning a fresh life in a way. Now, they've lived all these last 7-8 years. They are freer with the expense model. So luck played its part, but yes, that's the challenge we were trying. And we just ensured that every time we were putting in enough money which helps them meet the next 5-10 years of expenses before putting something else in the other growth bucket. So that was one. There's another funny thing that happened. Let me share it with you. So I was working with someone in IT industry from Bangalore, and so this person has enough, right? It's not that the portfolio was not enough, but in his mind, he was always doubtful that, is this enough? And so one day he talks to me and says, Vipin, I'm so tired, and I can't keep up with these long hours and late night calls with US teams, and I'm thinking of just resigning and going to maybe I'll do some NGO work, and so I said, let's learn the numbers, Ultimately, logic has to play its role. And I ran the numbers and I said, what, you can put in your papers tomorrow, and you don't need to earn another rupee of income for the rest of your life. I don't know why. It just gave him some kind of confidence. He next day went to his boss and said, I'm resigning. And he said, why? He said, this is reasons, I can't take this much work. I can't do this much. And he's probably 45 at that age. So his boss said, okay, let's do one thing. I'll reduce the amount of work that you have. You will not be handling these 3 projects, only these 2 projects. You will not have to do late night calls. And I'll also increase your salary.
Okay.
So, that was the first time I was hearing something like this. And I said, what happened here was this person got a new sense of confidence about his financial life, which enabled him to talk confidently to his boss. And that confidence was showing through. The other party probably perceived, this guy doesn't need the job, but I need him, because there are certain kind of tasks that only he can do and I won't have anyone else, right? So a situation where he was supposedly to be fired from the job because he's not willing to accept more work, right? He's getting reduced work and more pay. And he's happily continuing.
Very interesting.
So this is what I say, the whole idea of going through a disciplined, structured exercise like financial planning is to get that sense of awareness, to get that confidence that yes, what I'm planning for my life, for my family, for myself, how likely I'm going to achieve those goals, those milestones. Most people are really surprised, in terms of what they can do with their money, because they think, whatever I have will never be enough. I will, and they're probably thinking of insane amounts of money. I will need 10 crores, 20 crores, 100 crores. No, you don't. As long as you've identified what you want to do with your money, and you can all align it together, as I mentioned previously, I think most people have a fairly good chance of living a good life, and maybe even changing their careers altogether and moving into something which gives them more happiness, but maybe less money, but more happiness for sure.
Tell us about that customer who is retired early from a big 4 MNC as a consultant.
See, I think a similar story played out there. We had been discussing for a couple of years that the work is really straining, and I want to do something different with my life. That's how the investor client was thinking. And but am I ready to take that step? Because his was not a inexpensive lifestyle. It was a different lifestyle. Most people spend 3 lakhs in a year. He would probably spend 3 lakhs in a month. That's the kind of thing. And I know because he probably started investing in the markets in a big way when I came into the picture. Whatever investments he had earlier were negligible, honestly. Most of his money was in real estate or any other things like these. But over the last, 7-8 years again, and maybe less because we're talking of someone who's already retired. So yeah, for a couple of years we kept discussing as to can we take that step, and the firm just offered a way at a particular age you can take a sort of a voluntary retirement, and it will lead to a certain kind of payout, and putting it all together. And he also realized that I could take this step. And I think after 6 months of deliberation and finding his confidence, his feet on this decision, he did it. And for 1 year he was just traveling. And I don't think he has been more happy ever than that 1 year. And the journey continues till today. He has been doing various kind of stuff in the the NGO sector and some private consultation somewhere. But he is now the owner of his time, and that's what he values the most. And there is no, again, jugglery that has been done. It's simple, plain investment process put into play, which is going to work for him.
So could you just a little more elaborate on when you say investment process and asset allocation and such stuff? And what I get to understand from some of the stories that you have discussed just now, is it that most of the people in mid-career or later have just not run through the numbers that they need for expenses?
Oh, no. Most people haven't. Most people don't care also. They are too much focused on earning money and spending money. So we also know cases where, if someone has been earning 5 crores, spending 5 crores.
Wow, okay.
That's how they want to live. They say, मैं कल की चिंता क्यों करूं? I want to live in the moment. Fine, that's what they think. At some point I used to be like that.
Okay.
So most people are not aware, right? Most people are too concerned about other things also. I think you would agree, in our industry, the advice industry, a lot of people or a lot of new clients who come to us are through referrals, right? The people who have seen the advantage of doing something like this, and then they tell other people, hey, probably you should also check out if this is going to work for you. And people do come with hesitation because they've never done it. They've never talked to an advisor. And suddenly there's someone who's giving them all the gyan, do this, do that. And it just takes some amount of time to get used to this idea of taking the wrong word, orders from someone about changing your portfolio, changing your lifestyle, looking at your cash flows. They have never done it. They have never written a budget. They don't know where the money is going. I think one of my biggest points of happiness is that when we do the cash flow exercise and people realize, oh, am I saving so much? And on the other hand, oh, am I spending so much? Both ways. But there's a realization, and that changes a lot of things. So investment process is pretty simple. Once we have identified and aligned, what needs to be done, right? So I break it down typically into 3 steps. One is a financial plan. A financial plan helps the client get the broad direction of what needs to be done, right? In terms of what is the kind of risk I could take, how much return should I expect, what are my key financial milestones, how my cash flow is structured, am I insured adequately, are my emergency funds in place, etc. So there's a broad direction that one gets. And then once this is agreed upon, then you say, okay, how do we kind of translate it into a portfolio? What should a portfolio look like so that these milestones or this direction that you have set is also put into play, it gets executed in that sense. There's no trick here as such. It's a pretty simple process where based on the person's preferences and how they've been doing or what they want to achieve, you bring in investments into a portfolio that can take them there, right? It's like hiring a vehicle or buying a vehicle or whatever you may want to call it. But the vehicle is now to be presented so that they can start moving into that direction. Within that whole thing that we're talking about in financial plan, investment plan, we bring in the concept of asset allocation. Asset allocation is a sort of a golden rule as far as I'm concerned. It helps keep our excesses in check, right? You're going too much on one side, hey, please apply the brake, solve the steering and come back into the middle of the road. Whatever that middle is for you, right? Come back here. You should not be hitting or going off the road. Asset allocation does that for you. You've got too much in equity because the markets have gone up. Either put your incremental cash flows into now some other asset class, or pull out money from that and use it and reinvest it into the other asset classes. If you have too much in debt and the markets have gone down, now the equity allocation or the market allocation is looking low, please take money from one side and put into the other side. In a very simple way, you are taking away profits when they are becoming too much, and on the other side you are participating in a lower market when they are really down. It's a very effective way of practicing the most important principle in investing, which is buy low, sell high. Right? Because that's what is happening effectively. A lot of people end up complaining, right? Why am I sitting on this liquid fund or this arbitrage fund or this debt fund when it's giving me nothing, and the equity fund is giving me so much return, and then something like a 2020 happens and something like 2024, late 2024 to early 2025 happens, and they suddenly realize, yes, this is important. This is what keeps me grounded, because otherwise, if 90% is equity and if you don't have the mental capacity to tolerate the drawdown when it happens, you will just exit the entire exercise, which is going to be worse, right? So asset allocation helps people stay on track. I think that's how I'll put it. That's what happens, and I think it's relevant for most people. Even a person like, I know some few people who would just put aside some emergency funds in a safe place, maybe have their own house, some bit in gold, jewelry, etc. But everything else is invested into the markets, everything else. But then they have the mental capacity to live with any drawdowns. For most others, asset allocation is the key.
So my experience is most people don't want a financial advisor, or maybe they are not aware that financial advisor is there. What will you tell them? What are the typical fees that financial advisors charge, and is it worth paying those fees? Should they have a financial advisor?
I remember a very beautiful saying, as far as fees is concerned, I'm just trying to handle that, is, so there used to be a advisor used to come to my relative's office and he used to charge at 1% of the portfolio. And my relative would complain, why are you charging 1%? And he used to say, आपके 100 रुपए के नोट पे मेरा 1 रुपए का सिक्का है जो उसको बचा के रखता है. Right? So it's the horse which is carrying the whole thing forward. The other, of course, aspect is that you have to pay your advisors well. If you don't pay your advisors well, they're not going to work adequately for you, or maybe you're not going to get the right kind of advisors. Now, what is the right fee? That's something between you and your advisor to decide. I can't really comment upon it. There are various kinds of advisors in the market. Someone who charge a flat absolute amount, someone who charge a flat percentage amount, someone who charge a mixed model, etc., etc. Everyone has their own way of delivering value. You have to see whether that value is what you want and that fee is something that works for you. I'm coming back to the original statement you made, which is most people don't need financial advisors. Most people don't know that they need financial advisors. The problem is of the awareness, right? Because whenever we come across someone, we see all the red flags in what they have done. People are dabbling in stock markets, options trading, derivatives, buying lottery tickets, crypto, and I'm not sort of making fun of any of the things that are there, but the way they are being approached, everything is almost like, I want to become rich quick. You can get lucky, and invariably you can be, but not everyone is lucky. So for most people, a disciplined structure process is going to deliver. Process is going to deliver. You have to focus. Everyone has to focus on building the process. If you can do it by yourself, by looking at videos, reading books, or working with your friends, please do it. But if you can't, then having that advisor is worth the while and worth the cost.
So Vipin, tell us what are the different fee structures that are prevalent in the market. Typically, what kind of fees do people pay or advisors charge? Just break it down, give us a little more details for people to understand. What is the fee, what is the value add, what models are there.
So as I said, various kinds of fee structures, right? Starting from an absolute fixed amount. Someone could be charging 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 1 lakh, whatever that number is.
So that's 1 lakh per year, irrespective of the portfolio size.
No, it depends. So there are people who would charge you one time for advice, and then if you go back for a review or a rebalancing or an exercise like that, there would be a different amount involved. Sometimes it is lesser, sometimes it is more. Again, it works advisor to advisor. It's different. The advisors, and typically they would be stock advisors who would charge you a fixed percentage basis, right? A 1% or a 2%. Sometimes they vary it based on the amount of the portfolio that you are running with them. Up to 1 crore a certain amount, or up to 5 crores a certain amount of fees, and beyond that a different slab kicks in. If you were to look at the advisory profession, what are the things people are doing? Advisors are offering a service like financial planning, which is about building a financial plan, right? Helping you identify where do you stand in terms of your money, where are the key gaps, and how they need to be addressed. What are the key actions that will work for you? That kind of exercise, if done by a financial planner who identifies himself or herself as a financial planner, will be typically done at a fixed fee cost. And again, as I said, that fixed fee could be 30, 40, 50, 1 lakh, depending upon probably the complexity of the plan or something else. And then there are others who would want to engage clients on an ongoing basis. It's not a one-time exercise, an ongoing basis, because a financial plan is not something which you do once and forget about it. You have to keep it alive. You have to keep reviewing it. You have to keep making modifications based on how circumstances have changed, how maybe cash flows have changed, or markets have changed, or your requirements have changed. Accordingly, the financial plans have to be modified, right? And not just the financial plans, but underlying investments also have to be tailored to align with that plan. And that results in an ongoing advisory for investors. And there are advisors who would offer this, and they would charge an ongoing fee for an exercise like this. So you could have done a one-time fixed fee, absolute amount based financial plan, but then an ongoing thing could come for a percentage basis, right? It could be 0.5% per year, 1% per year, 2% per year, under the limits set by SEBI, the regulator. And as I said, then there's a third category which is very product focused, which is a stock advisor. And stock advisors typically work on a percentage based model. It could be 1%, 2%, 2.5%. That's how typically it is.
So what fees do the mutual fund distributors charge?
Mutual fund distributors don't charge any fees. Mutual fund distributors get a commission from the investments you make through them, which is paid to them directly from your funds by the mutual fund companies.
So who pays the fees? I don't pay the fees, right?
No, you don't cut a check and pay a fee. When you made your investment of 100 rupees, probably a 50 paise or 1 rupee will be taken and paid to the the distributor, and it doesn't happen one time. As long as you're invested through that distributor's code, right, the fee will keep going. The commissions will keep
Elaborate
going.
this a little. Suppose I have investments of say 10 lakhs, right, in mutual funds, say 3 or 4 different mutual funds. What is the typical commission structure, typical for say equity, debt, or if you could just.
So if you are invested only in equity funds, the commission payouts could vary from 0.5% to 1.5%, typically.
Okay.
And on an average, let's say about 0.75%.
Okay.
For equity funds. If there are debt funds or liquid funds, the payouts could be 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, something like that. For more, for debt funds on the riskier side, right, or long dated funds, it could sometimes even 0.5% as well. So, but typically most investors are investing in both equity and debt funds. So if I were to put a number, an average investor ends up shelling out between 0.5% to 1% every year from their portfolio to the distributor. So if a 10 lakh portfolio stands today, you would have paid out about 5 to 10,000 rupees. And if it becomes a 1 crore portfolio, this becomes 50,000 to 1 lakh rupees. That's the range.
So the only difference between a RIA and mutual fund distributor is that I end up paying the fees. The only difference is for mutual funds, the mutual fund company will cut the commission and directly pay the MFD. And here I have to cut a check and pay it to you every year. Is it?
So yeah, that's
and more
on
or
the,
less,
that's on the fee. That's on the payouts, right? But if you look at a broad picture, the purpose or the job of an RIA is quite different from that of the mutual fund distributor. A mutual fund distributor is focused on giving you mutual funds. You are investing in that instrument. They are distributor of funds. Like there's a distributor of life insurance, there's a distributor of mutual funds. And RIA is bound to take a very holistic view. That's how the regulations have envisaged it. It is imperative and mandatory in a way to understand where the client stands today in terms of their finances. The individual situation has to be completely studied, and based on that and the risk profiles and the current portfolios and cash flows, the right kind of advice has to be offered. In case of mutual fund, you could simply say, you know what, I have 50 lakhs to invest in mutual fund portfolio, please tell me what to do. And the job is done. There's nothing else to do. So it's a big difference. RIAs can go much further. They can also now recommend, if required, to you other kinds of products. They can help you build or maintain an asset allocation. They can indulge you in a very important exercise like estate planning, tax planning, writing a will, ensuring that succession doesn't get any problems. Right? They're willing to engage with you on critical financial decisions. Something like, should I be buying that 3 crore house or that 2 crore house? Okay, how should I fund it? Okay, I've got this ESOP, given to me by my company. Should I subscribe to them? Should I subscribe to them now? Should I sell them? What will be the tax implications? How can I set them off against anything else? Etc. etc. So there's a lot more value add that can be offered by an RIA compared to a pure play mutual fund distributor who's focused on only one thing.
So I have a rapid fire 2-3 questions for you. Okay. I'm a 30-year-old. What is the most important financial advice that I need?
Try to save at least 50% of your money.
ज़्यादा हो गया?
Not necessarily.
Possible है?
Possible hai.
I'm 40 years old. What is the most important financial advice that I need?
You have to ensure that your portfolio is invested right and that you are now planning towards the retirement phase. Your portfolio has to now start looking towards that goal.
I'm 50. What is the most important financial advice that I need?
So most likely you are now closer to fulfilling most of your financial obligations. The only one thing left is taking care of yourself. So maybe you can chill out a bit, as well as ensure that your retirement portfolio is intact.
So thank you, Vipin. Over the years, I have been your friend and I have benefited a lot from your personal advice on many fronts. And I'm sure the audience will also benefit from the wide-ranging advice that you have given in this, wide-ranging topics that you have covered in this video. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amey. You're very kind.